Hey, everybody. This is Kelly Nielsen, the Grief Guru. And on this channel, we discuss all things grief. What is it? How does it feel? What does it look like? But most importantly, we share tips, tools, and resources on how to move through grief and get back to loving your life. And in this episode, we're going to be exploring the idea of taking a trip to help facilitate your healing after loss. I have with me today Kristen Lohoff, who is an expert in this subject matter because unfortunately she's had multiple losses in her life, and whether it was intentionally or unintentionally, she recognizes that taking trips and just getting away has been so helpful and healing for her. And so now we're here to share her best tips and practices if you want to implement taking a trip as part of your healing process. That's what we're going to be exploring today. So Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. I'm really happy to be here and share the things that I've done.
Yeah, so tell me, I know you have a couple of trips and you took a really big, long trip. So why don't you share with folks kind of why this was even a necessity in your life and how you came to this conclusion?
Sure. Like you had said earlier, I had a lot of losses in my life as a young child. When I was 7 years old, my father died, and my mother had been planning a trip to Disney World for years before he did die. And once he was gone, she only had to pay for 3 people instead of 4. And she talked to a lot of friends about if it was still smart for her to go, or if that would be something people might consider to be in poor taste. And everybody told her go. So a couple months after my father died, we went to Disney World. And I don't know that that started the feeling inside me, but I know that when I had my other losses, like you mentioned, I actually lost 7 family members in 26 months. And for the first several losses, my husband and I grieved together when we lost my mother and when we lost an aunt and my father-in-law. And we planned trips after those too. There was just some need that we had to get away from our house, to get away from the things that reminded us of those people and brought us a lot of pain. And it was very healing to do that. Then unfortunately, the very last loss I had was my husband. He got cancer and 5 months later he died. And it knocked me to my knees because my entire support system had now kind of disappeared, and it was
Right.
yeah. And I didn't know what to do. So it came to me one day at work. I'm a school teacher, and I was walking down the hallway, and my husband had wanted to go visit our daughter in California. He wanted to see where she lived. And I promised him we'd do that, but he didn't live. And I thought I should still take him there. And that kind of sparked the whole idea for me. That gave me something to plan in my early grief, which I think is important.
Yeah.
Each day I would get up and I'd have something to think about and something positive to spend my energy on. And I think that was really huge. So I ended up planning an 83-day trip, and it sounds like a weird number, but my husband was hospitalized for 83 days. So it was my mission to take every single one of those days back for him in his honor, to go to places that we wanted to go. So I packed my unwilling children into the RV.
I love it.
Yeah, I took him. I live in Wisconsin. We headed out to California first, and then we literally made a loop around the country and saw a lot of things. And I didn't realize until I got home exactly how healing that was, to be away, to be in nature, all of that.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Like, looking back now, what do you think were some of the elements of the secret sauce? You mentioned, being in nature. Like, what do you think is so healing about just getting away and taking the time, or was it for you?
I think it was a multitude of things. I think nature itself, just being out in nature, in green, having the sun on your face, feeling that breeze blow over you, seeing amazing views. I went to a lot of national parks. It's just very soothing and quiet and calm. And I think that's the secret sauce of nature, is it just brings us that calmness. One other thing that happened on my trip was I met so many people along the way. I handed out these little calling cards, like business cards, and it just had my website name and a little map of the journey. And I would hand them out whenever we went places. And it started people talking to me. And that was another part that was so healing, was people would read the card and it said that my husband had died of cancer. So they would talk about their cancer stories, or they would talk about their grief stories. And in grief, especially early grief, we feel so isolated and so alone that there's nobody out there that can possibly understand how we're feeling. And to go on that trip and meet, everywhere I went, I would meet people that had been on their own grief journeys. And I think that helped me immensely. And I loved listening to their stories.
Yeah, I love that. It's such an important thing. And I'm guessing since you were early in your grief, you probably got to meet a lot of people that were a little bit farther out, right? And so you're seeing people and they're doing their day-to-day life and they come across you and they share their story and you see that they're okay. And that's so important. I've learned so much about like how our neurological systems work, and just seeing examples of people who've been through something similar to what you're going through and are on the other side is so great. And to know exactly, like you said, that you're not alone. You're not alone. Everybody has a story. If you've lived to a certain age, you're going to encounter grief. You can't avoid it, right? So meeting the people that have been through the same thing is such a powerful thing. And the other thing I want to circle back to, because it's so beautiful, is the fact that you intentionally planned your trip for 83 days to redeem the days that he was in the hospital. Because the temptation would be, you were in the hospital 83 days. I don't doubt that those 83 days were long and tiring and traumatic and emotional and whatever. And so many people, that's where people get stuck, is they can sit and fixate on the memory of those days. But that's part of what we help people do in Grief Relief Nation, is like, take something that was painful and how can you reorchestrate it? How can you reconceptualize it into something beautiful? So how amazing that now when you think about 83 days, it's not that you don't have to pretend that you weren't in the hospital for 83 days, but now you have like a powerful memory to come alongside that, you know, to something positive to counterbalance the thing that was negative. So that's so amazing. And I have to know, how did your kids do? So you took the kids unwillingly. So like, how did they do? And was it healing for them?
I have 4 daughters. I have 2 adult daughters and 2 young daughters. And my 2 young daughters came with me on the entire trip. And my 2 adult daughters came and went at different points where they could. It was a learning curve. I think that's what most people said. Are you nuts taking those 2 girls in the camper, just the 3 of you women in this little box traveling around? How are you going to handle it? And there was a learning curve to figure it out and to coming up with a routine. And I think that's important too, in grief as well as in travel, to come up with a daily routine that worked for us. And by the time I did that and figured out the kinks of how to handle like arguments between the 2 of them, and how to handle making all the food while I'm driving and trying to find places to stay. Yeah, it was a little challenging, but I did a lot of research before I left. And that is a key to a successful, especially road trip. Any trip, I think, is to research and know where you're going and what opportunities there are in that area. And that gave them something to look forward to. They did heal after that. I mean, you're never completely healed, I don't believe, but we came from that, living a life that brought us joy, and finding things in life that brought us joy, and learning what our new little family was. We went from a family of 6 with 2 grandparents who were pretty involved in our lives to a family of 3.
Yeah.
And we figured out that that was going to be okay.
That's awesome. That's so good. It is the nature of it is to figure out, okay, one season has ended, and how do we now learn to live in this new season? And how do we recognize that this new season isn't all bad? You know, there's good things and there's things to appreciate and celebrate and embrace about this new season, you know? And so that's so great. Okay, so let's just entertain for fun that somebody watching this video is like, that sounds like a good idea. I should take a trip. What are some of the tips that you would offer to them if they're thinking that maybe taking some time away is a good idea to help facilitate healing after loss?
Yeah, a couple of things I've already mentioned. And number one is research. And that I do help a lot of people. A lot of my friends who want to go on trips contact me first, because I've planned so many road trips. Even when my husband was alive, we traveled a lot. So I always get an email or a phone call saying, hey, I'm planning to go here. What should I do? Research where you're going so you know what they have to offer. And one of the great places to find information are city websites. Yeah, like the Chamber of Commerce. They'll have current events that are happening in an area that you might not have known about that are great fits for your family. And that helped. That was always my go-to. Another thing that helps is building that routine. If you're traveling for many days, my routine in traveling worked for me. I would get up very early in the morning, let the girls sleep, because I had an RV that was self-contained. I would make my coffee, get my coffee going, drive for 3 hours. We would get up, have breakfast, turn the camper into daytime mode, travel another 3 hours, and then we were at our destination and we could play and explore and things like that. So the routine is pretty big. Another one is to be flexible. And this is one I didn't realize until I was on my trip. I've never done this in any other trip until I took my 83-day trip. And since then, I put it in every trip I plan. Have flex days. Have a day where you haven't planned anything. Because what happened with me was I would get to a location and it was amazing. And we wanted to stay longer. So in my 83 days, I had about 4 or 5 days that were flex days so that I could stay longer someplace and not, because I mean, I literally had it planned out around the entire
Right.
so that I would get home to Wisconsin on day 83. So I had those flex days and they were brilliant. They helped me out a couple of times. One time when I wasn't feeling really well and I couldn't drive, I took a day. And another time when we were in a place we wanted to stay longer, I took another one.
Yeah, that's there's so many parallels with grief, right? Because that is one of the things that I have really embraced is flexibility and grace for myself, because grief shows up uninvited, unscheduled, and illogical. So many of the times, at least in my experience, it would show up at times, in the middle of a meeting or, just when you didn't plan for it. So I have learned to be a lot more flexible with my plans, with myself, to just give myself grace and permission to be however I need to be that day. And so that is definitely like a huge difference in me, after losses instead of before. So that's a great parallel. I have to ask, because you went so many places, what was your one? You have to pick one. What was your one, like, most favorite spot that you went on that road trip?
I get asked that a lot, and it is so hard to pick one. And I think especially from a grief perspective, the number one stop for me was Zion National Park. We had planned to do a hike called the Narrows, which is where you hike literally in a river with 2,000-foot canyons on each side of you. And it's absolutely breathtaking and amazing. And we had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do it before the heat of the day came in, so that by the time we were done, we could escape to air conditioning safety. And that was a really transformational moment for me, because it landed on a pivotal day in my husband's illnesses too. That was another thing. As I took my 83 days, I lived his illnesses, and that landed on a pretty pivotal day. Plus, it was the first day where I could feel myself truly smiling and being happy again. You know how when you smile, especially after grief, you put the smile on and it's not really there. But when the smile goes to your eyes and you can feel it in your whole body, then you know that you've taken a huge step forward. And there was a man that took my picture with my girls in the river, and I remember feeling it in my eyes. I was smiling, and that was probably my favorite moment of the trip.
Yeah, and how amazing to, like, give yourself permission to be that way. I know so many people who they start to feel happy or joy come in and they shut it down because they feel guilty, or like, how can I be happy when my husband is dead? But it's like, he would want you to be happy, and happiness is a part of your healing, and your kids need you to move on and all that kind of stuff. So how great to actually embrace it.
Right.
I feel compelled to share my little, and I didn't plan it this way, but like, I just feel like the universe and God are so good that they just orchestrate things. So it just interesting in terms of days aligning. My mom passed away on February 1st, and my birthday is February 16th. And back when I lived in Minnesota, I always planned a trip for my birthday, because it was like, if I could just make it to February, then I could get a trip, get some sunshine, and then get back home. So I'd had this trip planned. And when she passed away, I'm like, oh, should I go? And to your point, like, is it in poor taste? So can we just address that? There's no social rules, social etiquette that says you can't go on a vacation and do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself after loss of a loved one. And if anyone tells you they're not needing to be in your life, those are not people that you need to worry about their opinion. So let's just get that out the way. But anyways, I came to the conclusion I was going to go on this trip, and it was sunshine, and it was good. It was so good for my soul. And I ended the day before we left was my birthday. And we went down to Playa del Carmen, and I knew I was going to get a tattoo for my mom. I knew I wanted to do that, not in Mexico. Who gets a tattoo in Mexico? But I knew in my head, like, at some point I'm going to get a tattoo for my mom. So we go downtown, and the cab drops us off, and they drop us off right in front of a tattoo shop. And so the friend that I was with was like, well, we have to go in at least and see, you know. We go in, and it was this amazing tattoo artist who had just moved his shop from New York and like had all this like really awesome, like just really high quality artwork. And so I kicked around the idea of getting a tattoo of my mom, and I wanted to put her on the cover of the Rolling Stones, because you may be old enough to appreciate. Do you know the song, The Cover of the Rolling Stones from Dr. Hook? Do you know that song?
No.
Anyone who's watching, if you know this song, please like drop it in the comments. It's an old Dr. Hook song. Literally, this band like in the 60s or 70s wrote a song about getting on the cover of the Rolling Stones as a means to get on the cover of the Rolling Stones. And it worked. Like they ended up on the cover of the Rolling Stones. But when we were little, we always used to listen to that record. That's dating me. When we would play family game night or whatever, and all of us kids just fell in love with this song on the cover of the Rolling Stones. So it became a family anthem for us, and we all had a part to sing and everything. So when my mom passed away, I was like, how fitting to put my mom on the cover of the Rolling Stones. And so I sent this guy a picture, and he drew it all up and did it in Photoshop. And this
look at
is
that.
my mom on the cover of the Rolling Stones. So it ended up being this like total serendipitous moment that his schedule was completely open that day. Every other day I saw his book was completely full. That day he had nothing. It was on my birthday. And the joke I always like to say is that my mom spent 4 hours in labor bringing me into the world. And so I spent 4 hours in pain on my birthday, like commemorating and memorializing her on my arm. And so it was just so cool and cathartic and healing. And just, so I can't I can't recommend enough, like take a trip, get some space. Like I think too, like we've said, getting away from your house and your routine, like when someone, whether it's a spouse or a parent or a child, they're so woven into the fabric of your life that everything you do can be a trigger and upsetting. Grabbing a coffee cup out of the cupboard, you know, smelling their smell, seeing this and that. So like time away from that to just let your heart and mind reset and to begin the process of reconceptualizing what your life is going to look like. It's so beneficial to do it away from those, you know, heart-wrenching places. So I'm a huge fan. I think that everybody should do it. Everybody should do it.
Absolutely. Get out there.
Yes. And I have not done the whole like RV camper thing, but Kristen is a pro, and she actually has a website that chronicled her entire trip, and she has a bunch of useful tips on how to do that kind of traveling, state parks and all that kind of stuff. And I love the name, Our Classy Life, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Our Classy.
It's a pun on the style of motorhome, and my husband and I came up with it together.
I love that. I love that. So we will drop that link below if you guys want to check out her website to learn more about all the road kind of traveling. And as always, we'll have some links below for free resources for Grief Relief Nation as well. But Kristen, thank you so much. You're a warrior. You're a strong lady for having gone through everything that you've gone through, and the fact that your smile reaches your eyes, right, is amazing. So I just applaud you and thank you for being an example to people who are going through grief and loss, to know that they can get through it and really enjoy their life again. And I just appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I love sharing and talking about my story, and hope it inspires other people to get out there and do what's right for them, and will be healing for them.
Absolutely. I'm sure that it does more and more every day. Absolutely. All right, guys, until next time, we'll see ya.